Well, hello, everybody. This is the progress report for February 15th. That's right. We're more than halfway through the month of February, and we set a high temperature record today in Manchester of 61 degrees, 4 degrees above the prior record.
Wow.
You know, this has been the weirdest winter. We had the coldest wind chill ever recorded on top of Mount Washington, and yet, other than that, it's been real nice. You know, people not worrying so much about their heating bills.
It doesn't feel nice to me, Bob, because it's abnormal. It is a result of climate change. It is not good for us. And as pleasant as a day like this might be, it doesn't belong in February. So, you know, there's a right way and a wrong way for things.
Well,
61 in February is the wrong way to go.
Maybe wait till you get to my age. You may have a little different perspective on that, which I've certainly come to have. But in any event, catchers and pitchers are already throwing down at
that's good news.
The Red Sox training camp in Fort Myers, and so there's a lot of good things. And today we are very excited to have with the man I like to call Mr. Democrat. I don't think anybody's ever been more entitled to that label than the Democratic Party Chairman Raymond Buckley, who has seen the overseeing of our party for so many years, and most of it has been to great success, unbelievable success, bringing the Democrats from a kind of an asterisk to pretty much near irrelevant back when I first came back to New Hampshire many, many years ago to being a major force in all our elections year in and year out. I think a lot of that has to go to the skills and the dedication and the hard work of one Raymond Buckley. And I'm proud to call him my friend. And Raymond, thank you so much for joining us. And don't get too crazy. I know you're not a perfect person. I have people that tell me that all the time.
My
but
head
still,
is hurting because it's expanding so quickly.
So
Like an ice
anyway,
cream headache.
Mike, let me turn it over to you because I know you have.
Well, before we get started, I don't want to take too much time because we have a great guest, but I'm really excited about the continued growth of what I'm calling the worldwide progressive network. You know? I mean, it is just growing by leaps and bounds.
we
Folks,
are advancing. Thanks to Mike's daughter.
We did our first podcast last week. We're going to be this broadcast will be a podcast as well. We are up on Spotify. You can see us. You can pull our podcast down on Spotify. We hope you will do that. It's a great way to catch the information and entertainment that we provide in the show. And the bonus is you don't have to look at my ugly face. You just have to listen to the words. It makes it much better for everybody. So I would highly recommend that. We're working on getting onto Apple Tunes, and when that happens, we'll let you know.
Oh, I didn't even know about that. Apple Tunes.
I
thought that was about music. You're not going to sing, are you?
Podcasts,
Okay.
and podcasts. We want to be available throughout the state. We talk about statewide issues. We talk about Manchester. You can support us by just downloading and taking a look at what we've got out there. Don't forget our YouTube channel. Like it, subscribe to it, comment on it.
Instagram.
We're up on Instagram. We're up on Facebook. And I'm actually going to put out a plea. You guys, if you have a topic you'd like us to talk about, go to our Facebook page and comment and put up that topic, and we'll see what we can do to get a great guest and talk about it.
And we're also getting out questions that our viewers can weigh in on.
We do have a Facebook poll.
And it's a fun thing for you to do out there if you're interested in the kind of things we're trying to do.
Yep, we got a Facebook poll up there right now. Go to our Facebook page and click on that. It has to do with no-fault absentee voting, which who can be against it? But we'll leave that to you guys. We're going to poll the people and see what they think about that. So that's the exciting stuff, and we'll have new stuff next week. We keep going.
Okay.
So how does one find you? Is this the name?
The Progress Report Live.
Progress Report Live.
Yeah, and you have to put live because everybody in the world has a progress report of one type or another.
Well, a lot of people do.
But
it begs the question: why does it say with Bob Backus?
Because
that'll
Bob
work
Backus
too.
is
That'll
the-
work too.
Yeah. You don't count?
I do not count. I do not count one bit. I am purely here for comic relief and sidekick value.
I've lamented that a long time, because this show, we started it together many years ago. You were probably at the meeting. I think it was a Democratic City Committee meeting in the Manchester Library, and there was some griping about this lineup here was pretty not pro-democratic values. And somebody says, anybody want to do something about that? And I raised my hand, and so did Mike, and he came up with a name and launched the show. Originally, he was a backstage guy.
That was the whole point. You do not want this in front of a camera. It's just ridiculous. What a bad idea. But I keep punishing the audience every week for 14 years, 13 years.
We're still going, and I don't know how much longer we'll go, especially me, because I'm a lot older than anybody here. But
I think it'd be neat to maybe call it maybe like the Bacchus Farley debate or something like that, and just call it the BFD.
the trouble is we don't debate that often. We do sometimes. We get some debates about Bernie or not Bernie, and we occasionally have some other debates, but not all that often. But anyway.
Someday I'll tell you my stories about Bernie during the DNC chairs race.
Okay, I'd love to hear
it. He is very blunt.
Yeah.
It was all to my favor. I mean, that way it was.
Well,
all
you're a
positive.
very blunt guy too.
Yes,
as I've
yes,
come to
but
know.
he just no nonsense.
Yeah.
You're going to do this and you're going to do that. And I'm like, okay.
Okay. Well, you got videos you want to go to, or we want to launch right
Well,
in?
actually, I mean, the videos, we didn't expect our guests to arrive until a little bit later in the show, so the videos were for us to riff. We can put those aside. I do have a few videos dealing with the New Hampshire primary.
Let's do that.
If you want to run those, there's three
Let's-
very short
let's
reports.
do at least a couple of them,
And then maybe we can
then
go
we
to
can,
Raymond.
can launch
So,
our discussion. I think that's a wonderful idea. And by the way, you can still call us live here at 603-640.
do you have those, Brendan? They were kind of in order. The last, the Sununu interview, and then after that, the report on the DNC decision.
Yep.
Yes, please.
So, in one word, yes or no, do you think that New Hampshire is going to maintain its status after the weekend, or after they decide?
Not as a lone state, I don't. I think Hassan and Senators Hassan and Shaheen made a pitch. I think they made a terrible pitch. They did a terrible job of it, frankly. And we've joined together. We're aligned in this, but I really don't have a say. Last time I checked, Joe Biden and the Democrat Party don't really care what Chris Sununu have to say. And unfortunately, I don't believe. I hope it's there. But I don't have a whole lot of faith that they're gonna get there. They'll find some other manipulative way to give it to another state or share it with another state or something like that. We'll see what happens. I don't know. I think if they were going to choose New Hampshire to remain in its place, we would have known that 3 or 4 months ago when they first said they were going to announce the results and make this decision, right? They said they were going to do it back in August. They intentionally decided to delay that, I think, because they didn't want to kind of expose Hassan and Shaheen for not getting the job done and affect them politically. But unfortunately, I think that's probably the way it goes. I hope not. No, I'm knocking on wood. I hope I'm wrong. As governor, I hope I am so wrong in that assessment.
Commitment 2024 tonight. The Democratic National Committee is now giving New Hampshire until June 3rd to meet the party's requirements to hold an early primary. The DNC originally gave the state until January 5th to repeal the state law that requires New Hampshire's primary to be first and to allow early voting. The state party has said neither can be done with Republicans holding both houses of the legislature and the governor's office. The National Party could take away New Hampshire's current second spot in the Democratic primary calendar if those demands are not met. State leaders from both parties have promised to still hold the first in the nation primary.
Well, I tried to set it up. You have the first interview with Governor Sununu happened before the decision was made back last year, and he was pretty snarky in his comments, and I wanted to have Chairman Buckley have a chance to respond to those. And then the second is the most recent news that not only did they make the decision to move the New Hampshire primary to second, but we might not even get that if we don't change our current election laws, which is a pretty tough haul. So Raymond, can start a discussion. How do you feel about this?
Well, we're going to have the first in the nation primary, with or without the president. We find it would be unfortunate if the president chose not to file in the primary. Can you imagine primary night? 11 o'clock news. And New Hampshire had its first in the nation primary, and Donald Trump destroys Chris Sununu in the presidential primary. And on the Democratic side, Mildred Smith, a housekeeper living in Oklahoma City, won the Democratic primary in New Hampshire. I mean, that's that. And you don't think the Republicans are going to declare Mildred Smith as the front runner running for president? I mean, they'll have a field day.
It would be
they will
several
have a
weeks
field
of
day.
fun with that.
Never mind the fact that there'll be a plaque with Mildred Smith's name front of the state library because every winner of the presidential
Oh, yeah?
primaries get there. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Can
I'm
you
going to sign up.
imagine?
Yeah.
Your favorite son. Favorite son.
So
no,
you're saying that despite what Biden has done, and I think you have to agree it's related to his very poor showing in the last presidential primary, coming in 5th, leaving the state even before the votes were counted, that this is all a result of that outcome when he rehabilitated his presidential hopes and won the presidency as a result.
You know, we hope not. Something obviously happened that last day before the announcement. We had a conversation, had commitments, and were assured by members of the committee, people from the White House, people at the DNC, that we were not the target, that it was just simply Iowa, that's all they were going to do, and that we were fine. So something happened. I don't know what it was, but I can tell you one thing, that something happened that I've never seen in New Hampshire political history, is that the 22 top Biden supporters in New Hampshire, from Governor Lynch, both Congressman Hose, Congresswoman Shea Porter, former Chief Justice Broderick,
Yes.
former ambassador. I mean, you go through the list, the 22 former Speaker, Donna Soucy. I mean, all the people that were there for Biden, some back in '87, all signed a letter to the president condemning and asking him to revisit. The fact that they were all willing to put their name on the, you think back, nobody has ever.
22. That's a long list.
Yeah, I mean that has
Well,
never happened
we could
before.
put you on that letter too, couldn't we?
Well,
I remember seeing you. I don't
doing
think it was on our
Dukakis.
show. I think it was on Close Up on Channel 9. Do you think President Biden should run for a second term? You said yes. Will you support him? You said yes.
Oh yeah, he should definitely run for re-election, and I hope that we have regained the majority in the House, and we can get back to work. I mean, his accomplishments in that first 2 years is unparalleled.
Well, it is.
And it's unfortunate that by 5 votes, 5 members, I believe, the Republicans have a majority, and we're not able to continue that progress. But we've got to. There's a lot of things deeply wrong with this country that he was addressing, unlike any president in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, the economic recovery issue is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
The addressing of the infrastructure, just the long climate.
Incredible list
Yeah.
of achievements.
It was
Absolutely.
unbelievable.
And I don't think anybody else could have done it.
Yeah,
I think his extensive knowledge of the legislative process, since he's been there since he was the most youngest senator elected from the state, of maybe in the country, but certainly from the state of Delaware, way back when he first started. And all he's accomplished there.
That's
and
why I'm not convinced that this was Joe Biden that made I think some of his.
Well, it
something
dropped
happened.
so hard, so late.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I felt like I got a ring on my doorbell. I opened the door, and there's Dark Brandon, and he slapped me in the face and took off. You know what I mean? It was that abrupt. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, I was in Washington. Donna Soucy was, DNC members there. Joanne Dowdell, our National Committee woman, member of the Rules Committee, and Troy, our executive director. I mean, we were all there, and we were there just to be there. I mean, literally, we had so many assurances. Nope, we're with you. Don't worry, don't worry. But of course, you get a letter from the president. They folded. So
well, you say something must have happened. What could have happened other than his abysmal showing in the New Hampshire primary and his great showing in South Carolina?
But
What
that
else?
wouldn't explain the timing of this.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
wouldn't
I mean, there was no whisper. There was no like, "Hey, watch out, something's about to." People don't keep secrets in politics, as you know. So I don't know. We'll find out in the books. There'll be a book written about this cycle,
Oh,
and
sure.
it'll be in there. I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to it. The important thing is that whatever sanctions that they put against New Hampshire Democrats, make sure that it's sanctions against the party and not our candidates. Don't jeopardize our ability with Sununu, thank you, leaving as governor. We've got a shot at picking up the governors.
Yeah, that's the good news.
We only have a 3-seat minority in the House, 3-seat minority in the state Senate. We've got these 2 congressional seats. If we're going to win the majority back in the U.S. House, we've got to reelect Annie and Chris.
But that's got to be concerning to you. how are people going to react? This is something that not only did we grow up with, our fathers grew up with it, and some of our grandfathers grew up with this primary. You know, I mean, it's over 100 years.
Yeah.
I'm concerned that the independent voter is not going to get fired up for a Democratic candidate after this.
Well, trying to explain that to the national press too, because well, Democrats just won't turn out. It's like, no, I'm not talking about the Democrats. New Hampshire voters, it's 30% Democrats, 30% Republicans, 40% independent, and in that 40%, 30% of them are really Democrats, 30% of them are really Republican. So then you're dealing with the 30%, and a lot of these people are ticket splitters, and they just like move around, and then you got that sliver of about 20,000.
That makes the difference in a lot of races.
In every race. You look through our statewide races, it is rare that it's outside that margin. I mean, it happens, but all they have to do is just, beat on them a message. And if you hear enough times, these are people that aren't really politically connected, or, they don't focus on politics. It just happens to them. So we're going to fight hard, and we're going to make sure that we've got a strong ticket. And I think that this too shall pass.
You made the point that a number of luminaries, including you and John Lynch and Donna Soucy, many signed this letter to the president or his campaign people saying, don't do this. One of the signers was Steve Shurtleff, a former Speaker of the House, an excellent speaker, by the way, and he's back serving in the House, no longer as the leader, but he's serving. And he's the only one I've heard of said, as a result of this, he won't support Biden's reelection. Has anybody else on that list of signatories gone that far?
Well, I mean, what he said is he won't support Biden's reelection in the primary. And with Biden not being on the ballot, none of us will be. Unless we
Good point. I hadn't thought of that. That's perfectly
easy to say, right?
Easy to say.
Take a stand.
Unless somebody decides to organize a write-in effort. I mean, that's up to them.
Yeah.
Write-ins are hard. And also, it's mostly because in New Hampshire you can't put a sticker. A lot of states for write-ins you just give people stickers and they can put it, and it counts. In New Hampshire you have to actually write the name and check the name off. But I would discourage that, because what that does is it slows down the counting. Can you imagine if 150,000 people did a write-in in the presidential primary?
Yeah.
I mean,
I've counted the write-ins in Ward 8, and that would be murderous.
And we would be in an Iowa situation where it would take days to get there. It would be. So I hope that there isn't a mega write-in effort, because we just aren't equipped to.
Although we did have a winner in the New Hampshire primary once who went on a write-in.
We have,
and that was during the Vietnam War. Henry Cabot Lodge became the Republican favorite in the New Hampshire primary.
Lyndon Johnson was not on the ballot in '68. He was a write-in. And that McCarthy was on the ballot, but Johnson was not.
Yeah.
Interesting part of that is that the write-in effort was fully funded through the Democratic State Committee. And the State Committee completely ran the campaign out of the party office, Carpenter Center, Dunphy's Hotel at the time. And because of that, the Constitution of the New Hampshire State Party now says the State Committee, the State Party as an entity, the chair, we cannot endorse in a primary.
Yeah.
No local committee can, a county committee can't, no committee of the party, nor the chair can endorse in a primary. And that's all a result of the Lyndon Johnson McCarthy primary of 1968, which Mike was not around for, but you remember well.
I was around for that. I was around.
How old were you?
I wasn't
3?
old enough to vote. No. I'm your age, Rick.
I was 3.
Really? Well,
Bob's the one that's in the library with Rockefeller. It's a big shot.
One of the greatest photographs I've ever seen.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
And nobody guesses that it's you until I say, "Oh, it's Bob." Oh, yeah,
looks just like him.
That's the year I was supporting Nelson Rockefeller for president on the grounds that he was the liberal in the race. Oh my God, can you believe it? Anyway,
Bob fancying himself quite the liberal at the time.
Yeah,
I like that too.
I was,
a doctor's son out in Goffstown.
Goffstown, that's right. Yeah. So what happens if Biden stands aside from the New Hampshire primary to support the Democratic National Committee position, and then what becomes of the primary for the Democrats? I think you've already spoken to this.
Well, even if
He's not going to be seriously primary.
If
Right.
if Mildred Smith shows up or somebody shows up,
But at the end of the day, the impact, of course, would be, in a normal situation, would be the delegates being sent to the convention, because it's based on the results of the primary. But since it appears they're not going to let us go to the convention, it doesn't really matter. Look I'm not, and I've told the staff that, it's like, we're not wasting a lot of time on this. We're going to have the primary. The president can decide whether or not, but we are focusing on November 2024.
Yeah.
We have got to win we have a strategy to go from now to 2030, because damn it, we're going to win in 2030, because we're going to unscramble those
Thank you
districts.
for saying that.
if we can just unscramble, more people in New Hampshire voted for Democrats to be on the executive council than for Republicans. But we have 1 to 4. We only have 1 seat out of 5. More people went in and voted for a Democrat for state senate, but we only have 10 out of 24. More people went in and voted for Democrats to serve in the House, and we have the minority.
Yeah.
Be it so slow.
So it's a clean sweep for him on that. And
But
that's the definition of gerrymandering, isn't it?
Absolutely, if they had been fair districts created, we would have had the majorities in all 3. And how they think that's funny, or that they gloat about it, or they think but it's really there's going to be a breaking point with people in New Hampshire are going to realize that these people are just stealing their votes, their voice.
yeah. I
And
think,
I wouldn't want to pick on Ross Berry, the political operative that became a state rep for southern Manchester, for being the person that shoved through all the gerrymandered districts. So I'm not even going to bring up his name.
well, thank you. I guess.
Some people call him Poisonberry, but I do not. I do not.
You brought up a point that seems pretty sensitive to me. In the Republican effort, which I think and I'm sure you do, is really an effort to suppress the vote, but they claim it's just an effort to prevent the non-existent voter fraud from not only never happening, but never ever happening. They are putting in things like, these provisional ballots, and I don't know when the first time we're going to deal with these.
Tuesday.
Tuesday? Really? In a special election?
Special election in Rochester.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Grassie's election? Mm-hmm. Well, and all of that leads to something I think is one of the major causes of the growing public distress in our election, which is delaying the results being announced. I think that was a huge part of this whole Trump campaign, that the election was stolen, was the results were so delayed. He wanted to stop the counting of votes when he was ahead because they hadn't had time to count the mail-in ballots. So I guess you agree with that, and what do you think we should do to end that? I mean, can we get rid of these provisional ballots? And while you're on it, you might as well talk about what you think about, no excuse absentee balloting, which, our Secretary of States, including Bill Gardner, have opposed.
There is
Bill Gardner opposed it, or
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, really?
There's
Oh,
no
yeah, I talked
rational
about it.
argument for the provisional ballot. It was not needed, but many of their so-called reforms, which are really rigging the election, there's no. We have more people percentage-wise that vote here, especially since, if you look at a 4-year period, millions of votes are being counted and cast, and you're coming up with 1 or 2, and almost every time it's a Republican.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
I've noticed that.
It's just like sickening. So it's just baloney. Now, when it comes to the no excuse absentee ballot, the majority of voters voted by absentee in 2020. And we had a record number of turnout. Do you remember hearing any problem? No.
I don't.
So there is no argument against no excuse absentee ballot.
Other than it increases the number of votes, and that, in general, is not good for Republicans.
Well, Bill Gardner made this argument. I don't know what Dave Scannell would make. He's now the Secretary of State. I know he'd make the same argument, but his argument was, well, coming together to vote in a community at a place at a time is a kind of a community event that supports our democracy and our participation in the democracy.
Yeah,
And,
cancel election day.
And,
Just make it easier for
and
people.
that's wonderful that Bill chooses to live in 1870. But the voting population is in 2023. And with these gadgets and everything else, people are distracted, involved, engaged in doing. It's not like they've got time to go stand in line for an hour. I mean, you hear the stories about people with kids or with medications or that they just give up and walk away. Some towns people get harassed because they look different.
or you can have a town like Derry, which chooses as the fourth largest community in the state to have one polling place for the whole town to save a few bucks on the town budget, and it breaks down.
It breaks down.
Yeah.
Yeah. God forbid we would make it a priority that every single person eligible to vote got to vote, and that their votes were counted correctly.
Yeah.
Oh, God forbid.
Yeah. Very good. Well, let's move on, Raymond, unless you got more you'd like to say.
Well,
about
the only
this.
thing, if we're going to talk about Republicans being crazy and
Yeah, let's do that.
and that sort of stuff. So I saw, so Ward 6. None of us are from Ward 6, so we can pick on. The last 3 aldermen from Ward 6 have resigned midstream. Last 3,
Including the current one.
including Sebastian, who had only lived in the state for like 24 or 5 months since when he filed. He gets elected by a handful of votes, the special, and sweeps in. Notorious not paying attention. Anyone watching on TV could see that he was not engaged. Anyways, so he resigns. So who steps forward but Maxine Morse, retired Manchester educator, phenomenal leader. Should we just
Wonderful lady. Wonderful lady.
amazing on the Board of Aldermen. And her opponent. Now, anyone who follows me on Twitter can go on and see it because I retweeted it. So Chrissy Cantor is her name, and she owns some spa, apparently. But it seems that she doesn't just live in Ward 6, Manchester, New Hampshire, but she also lives part-time in New Mexico, where she's very involved in the Trump truther, or what's the effort that they
The
deny the
social
election
media thing, yeah.
Yeah, and so there's a video of her claiming that all the elections were stolen, and on and on. There's somebody else tweeted that she was in Washington on January 6th. I don't know that yet, but we'll look into that. But why would the voters of Ward 6 trust the Republicans going to serve their term, number one?
Yeah.
And number two, somebody that lives half the time apparently in New Mexico, rabble-rousing about Donald Trump. You got this person who's given their life to educating the kids of Manchester to this operative that
Maxine's rock solid,
Yeah.
too. She knows
Yeah.
her stuff. She's very active and excellent advocate.
Well, she was almost elected
By inches, yeah.
by
Missed it
inches,
by that
and
much, as
then
Max
declared that
Westmont
she
said.
wasn't, which was a recount of a recount, as we remember. Well. Let's move on. And I'd like to get your take on the governor's State of the Union address. Not State of the Union. That was a nothing address.
Budget.
The budget. State of the Union made no proposals of any kind. But the budget, of course, he had to come up with a budget proposal. And he did. And a lot of people were reacting pretty favorably to it. But I would be interested in your take on it. Obviously, the speech was a...
Thanks to Joe Biden,
Yeah.
let's include that part. A good chunk of that budget is going to be
Yeah,
federal
funded
funding.
from the
that-
very largesse that he
the
imposed.
delegation secured for New Hampshire, and that he then goes on TV
in badmouths.
and says, "Oh, they don't do anything." He has no scruples. I mean, he will say anything. It's sometimes you watch those TikToks with the 3-year-old kids that got lipstick all over their face, and they go, "What'd you do?" And they're like, "Nothing." that's Chris Sununu. It's like, what? He'll be gone in less than 2 years.
Let me ask you about that. He cannot run for governor?
No,
and
he's already said
president?
he's not running for
Oh, I
fifth term.
understand. I
Yeah.
didn't realize that.
Yeah, no,
He's pretty serious about running for president.
I can tell.
Well,
I'm
he-
going to enjoy watching this.
Well, I had a reporter the other day ask me about that, and I said, "Look, Chris Sununu loves being interviewed, loves it. I mean, he would rather be in front of a TV camera than just about anything else on earth. But the idea of Christopher T. Sununu raising $100 million? No, because he doesn't even raise much as governor. Because the 2 times the races look close, the Republican Governors Association came in with $3-4 million to make sure that he won. Yeah. So he does not have a national network.
Some of the big money boys are apparently abandoning Trump, and they have to go somewhere. Why could they not go to Sununu?
If you've got big money, you can see through Sununu.
Mm-hmm.
He's what's that? All hat, no cattle. Is that what they say?
Yeah.
Empty suit. I mean, all of the different things.
That's the
No,
Texas cliche.
We all know that this was, old man Sununu's dream for John E. Sununu until Jean Shaheen hip checked him right out of the Senate.
She sure did.
And so we're assuming that if he does run, it's going to be more as a homage to his dad. Which we've all done things to get our father's favor.
Oh, God. Well, his father, I know him all too well.
Yeah, you do. Yeah, he was very close. You and John H. Sununu were very, very close.
I remember one time debating the Seabrook issue with him down at Salem High School. He was, I think, a state rep from Salem at the time, something. From
One
Salem.
term.
One term. And he just attacked me on a personal basis relentlessly.
That's him.
And Nancy came up to me after. She said, "I'd like to apologize for my husband's behavior." So I'm okay with Nancy.
No, she is the best political operative of that family. Yeah. Remember, people forget she was the Republican State Party chair in the 70s.
Was she?
Oh, that's right.
I mean,
I had forgotten that. I remember now.
She knew what she was doing, and she was smart, but probably, maybe she should have been the one running instead of her husband. I don't know.
No, he was in Mensa. He was a.
Were you in the House when I debated Governor Sununu and he fell off the stool?
No,
He got so
I wish that had happened in my debate.
He got so mad at me. I was like, "Oh my God, no!" I mean, he thought he could bully me, and I was like, "Yeah, no." Yeah. I was like, "It's right here. 3 of your 6 years were in deficit." Yeah, we're not. I was like, "This is from the state of New Hampshire, and those numbers are in parentheses." I was on the finance committee. Parentheses means deficit.
Negative.
He got all. Next thing you know, he's on. I was like, "Oh my God, please!" That would be the worst.
Let me go back to the First in the Nation primary thing. I'm making a little detour here, but let me do it if I can. I remember, Raymond, when they rearranged things so that New Hampshire was the first primary and South Carolina was going to be the second.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah.
And you had a great relationship with the people of South
Still
Carolina.
do, yeah.
Called Granite and Grits. I don't know, you came up with that phrase.
Yep.
Granite goes good, and then the grits go great.
Yep.
And you still have a good relationship with them?
They did not ask to be moved first.
Okay.
They were more shocked than we were.
Yeah.
Because.
Well, they're probably happy to consider the possibility now, aren't they?
Well, when was the last time Iowa, who had been first, made the determination of who was the nominee? When? So in 2006, everyone's going, New Hampshire and Iowa aren't diverse enough, or not diverse enough. So it's like, okay. So instead of 2 early states, we had 4, Nevada, South Carolina. Mm-hmm. So the order was Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, South Carolina. Since that time, so 2008, who won 2008 South Carolina? Barack Obama. Who was the nominee? Barack Obama. 2012, of course. 2016, who won South Carolina? Hillary Clinton. Who was the nominee? Hillary Clinton. 2020, who won South Carolina? Joe Biden. Who was the nominee? They were very happy in that 4th position because they were the kingmaker. Yeah. And we've never asked to be the kingmaker in New Hampshire. We just want to, here's 3-4 people that pass muster. And so they're in a weakened position. And Nevada, who were trying to become first for whatever reason. So South Carolina is going to be on a Saturday. Nevada's primary is going to be 3 days later. Mm-hmm. So to get from South Carolina all the way out to Nevada and they're going to be there for 2 days, and then, or are they just going to skip it? Because, as we learned in the U.S. Senate race, you can get your ballot in for days and days and days after Election Day in Nevada. So it might be 2 weeks before the people know. And what happens in 2 weeks? Oh, that's when the primary in Michigan occurs. So if we were ever to be squeezed and forced to do the calendar they did, which would have South Carolina on Saturday, and Nevada and New Hampshire on that Tuesday, and then Michigan and Georgia after that. Well, if you're in South Carolina, you've only got 3 days. You
can make hay with that in New Hampshire. You can't do anything.
You come right, and you get the results at 11 o'clock news Eastern time.
Yeah, that's very important.
In Nevada, you're not going to get the result. But why would you? If you had to choose between going up to New Hampshire, be there in 2 hours, or in Nevada, taking 4 hours to get out there, and the results not being known until
plus the size of the state. I mean, what kind of real campaign can you do in those 2 days? In New Hampshire, in 2 days, you can do a real campaign. You really could. Hit some places and talk to some people.
As Hillary Clinton proved that. People remember back in 2008, the Iowa caucus was on a Thursday night, and so we had Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Tuesday was our primary. So they flew back overnight, they arrived Friday morning, and boom, and she went from being down to ahead. So yeah, she obviously campaigned the length and breadth of the state in 2008.
Yeah, you hit all the shave ash ons, and
I think you got to give Iowa a little credit for pushing Barack Obama's success.
Oh yeah.
It's not like they struck out every time. They had something there, but they
you're
certainly
only as good as your last at bat.
Yeah, the last at bat was a disaster. Yeah. So here's another thing that just came to mind as you were talking, Raymond. A lot of talk about moving our own primary, our own state primary. Well ahead of where it is now. It's now, the second Tuesday in September.
Yep.
Leaving a very short time for the candidates that have won.
Which the Republicans, when they were winning everything, thought that was wonderful.
Yeah.
And now that they're not winning much other than Sununu, they're really not winning any major office. And so, that's a problem.
I'm going to go on the record. I think it is wonderful. It's long enough. Those 2 months feel like 3.
I don't hear anybody urging longer campaigns. It's like
So
they already never stop.
Well, the people who want to have an earlier primary are urging a longer campaign. That's the effect.
Well, what happens, because there are things that impact. I think Ross Berry and some others are suggesting that we have the primary in June. So if the primary is the first Tuesday of June, then the filing period would be 60 days before that. So that means the filing period would be end 1st of April. And if the filing period is a week and a half, 2 weeks, that you're getting into March where you're filing for office. You're in session, the state House and the state Senate. So it's going to who's not going to go down there and try to get a little press for their reelection effort? If you have to file for reelection and your primary is going on while you're serving,
it's the very height of the legislative activity.
I think it just it's one more nail in the coffin of destroying the citizen legislature. Now, I'm very much in favor of repealing our 1984 Constitution that we worked so hard to pass and that allowed annual sessions. I think that the point of that was that we wanted to have annual budgets. That's never happened since '84. And if you look at who served in the House on our side, I can't talk to that. We had, young people that could afford to take 6 months every 2 years off. What we're asking young people to do is take 6 months every year off. And so you're not getting the diversity. You're not getting the low income people. You're not getting the college students. All of the folks that were able to kind of figure out how to do it for 6 months, out of a cycle. And we had session on Tuesdays. I worked there then, so we had session every Tuesday afternoon, every Thursday afternoon, and committees were before that. And You did the work and it was over. You didn't have all these commissions and, let's study this.
Study
I mean,
committees, yeah.
they've made it into a full-time job down there, and that hurts the ability of having average people there. Now, I also support looking at having night. Every city and town in the state of New Hampshire runs by having meetings at night.
Yes, that's right.
And why can't we do hearings at night? Why can't we even have sessions at night? There's no real, other than a good number of the House members are also school board members, selectmen, town councilors, and
A
whatnot.
lot of them are too old to drive at night.
Well, we're
I would
all getting a little older.
Well, I speak with apprehension about my own night driving.
I remember the biennial sessions. They'd set the budget. It ran for 2 years, and then they would take the second year off. And I'm reminded of that famous quote. I forget who made it, but neither life, liberty, nor property are safe when the legislature's in session. So at least every other year we were safe. I mean, so I really do think, given the pay, it certainly makes sense to. Cut that workload. But you've got a whole industry that's kind of been built up around this legislation.
I just left a fundraiser where I think that person may have raised $40,000 tonight and there was lobbyists, just an office holder, and unthinkable. I know I always sound like an old man, but in 1978 when I was working for the House and stuff like that, I mean, there was no money. When John King started running for state senate back in '88, I think he spent maybe $2,400, something like that. Now it's $240,000. And even the House races are just getting completely bonkers with the amount of money that they're spending. When I get the reports that people are getting $10,000 donations to run for the New Hampshire House.
Really?
Holy smokes!
Wow. It's been a while since
Surf-
I did it, but that's shocking to me.
Yeah,
It's not been long since I did it, but that's still
I always raise enough money not only for myself, but for the other two candidates that were running with me from Ward 8, and have more than half of it to be able to donate to other candidates or to the party or something like that. So I would, on my own, probably spend $1,500 just for myself an election cycle.
Wow. Well, what's the solution to that?
Well, there isn't a lot. There's the Citizens United decision blew up our hopes, our ability
To
to
do
put
campaign finance reform
it
in any meaningful way.
just and
Unless we could go to public funding, which the public doesn't seem to be willing
well,
at
even
all
if you
to
did public funding, the Supreme Court ruling of Citizens
can
United,
still
those
donate
corporations can spend it.
Yeah.
My mother called the day that it passed, and she goes, "What's wrong?" I said, "I think this is one of the saddest days of my life." She goes, "Oh, who died?" or something. I said, "Democracy."
Yeah.
Because
think
you
you're
can't
right.
put
Yeah,
that back.
you're
The people that utilize that will make sure we never get to change the Constitution to have. And what it means is that if you're a person of limited means, you have to sell your soul.
Yeah.
And
It's the only people that can have any true, real independence in their legislative work or political work are the people that can fund their own campaigns.
now, in my days, I was 18 years up there. Only one time did a lobbyist say, "Hey, I gave you a contribution. I want you to do this." And I kicked the person out of my office. I said,
Yeah.
"Don't ever talk to me again." And I never spoke to that lobbyist again
No.
as long as I served in the House. Nowadays,
And the other thing is that what the lobbyists get from their donations, they won't get a commitment that you're going to vote a particular way, but they will get access.
yeah.
And in politics and in office.
And they make a lot of money.
And that access is
They make a lot of
everything.
money.
Who gets in to talk and make the case? Who's the last one to make the pitch?
They make hundreds
Lobbyists
of
are literally
thousands.
the experts
Yeah.
at committees.
You-
Well,
know what
because
I
we
mean?
don't have any staff up there.
Because
Right.
we don't have staff.
Yeah, that's right.
that's-
He wants information, you got to go to the lobbyist.
I hope I'm not using. So Martin Gross, a longtime Democrat, but he was the lobbyist for Public Service Company, as you
Oh, tell me about
remember. So my first term representing Ward 8 back in I was elected in '86, so it was 1987. He came in and did a presentation to the committee, and it was slick, color programs and this and that. And you could tell he had rehearsed everything he was going to say. He did it looking at the right people at the right time. So the committee voted, and there was 22 members, I think, and it was like 21-1. I voted no, and afterwards I said, Marty, I don't know what your bill really does, but it has to be something pretty bad for you to have worked that hard for a presentation. I said, so whatever it does is not what I want to happen. He goes, you're going to be a great legislator.
Well, I had a dear friend of the Seacoast. Remember her, Bobby Pavia?
Yes, oh yeah.
Represented Hampton Falls, and she was a vociferous opponent of Seabrook because her husband was dying of cancer, and they thought the radiation from the shipyard where he worked was part of it. And she confronted him one time at a hearing at the PUC where he's, advocating for the project and the building of the nuclear plant. And he finally turned around and he says, Bobby, they only rent me.
That
Self-aware,
sounds
the
like
self-aware Marty Gross.
Yeah.
So Marty and Caroline, was Republican
Yep.
wife. Marty actually supported Jimmy Carter in the 75-76 primary. So all the New Hampshire folks got invited to the White House in February of 1978. I was 18 years old. I didn't have enough money to go, and they actually paid for my flight. And it was the first time I'd ever been in a plane in my life.
Where did you go?
To the White House.
Oh.
18 years old, yeah.
I've been there many, many times since, I know. And I hope you'll have many more invitations to go.
Well,
not only for this term,
not so
but the next term. Well, you haven't said you don't want Biden to run. And
I might not be invited.
well,
That's
yeah,
okay. That's just more time to organize local committees.
Yeah.
So you do not see a negative impact on state races, on the running of the state party? I mean, we were making very good progress, turned the state purple. Almost, I mean, we're on the threshold, and I like your plan to 2030 to really make the impact that we've been needing to make for the past 20 years.
How are you going to keep it going?
Do people go sour because of something like this? Because of a great tradition being lost, like the old man falling down,
Come on now.
All right, I'm a little melodramatic. You get the point of my question.
Here's the Republicans engineered that too, Mike. Just want to let you know. Go ahead.
You've been hanging out with Sununu. Your political theater is really going down that. Look at, when Al Gore lost New Hampshire in 2000 by the 7,000 votes, and subsequently the presidency, which then created that whole domino effect of George W. I promised myself that as long as I'm alive, no Republican is going to win New Hampshire for the presidential race. And so far, I've kept my word to myself. I made lots of promises like that. So I'm going to make it happen.
Indeed, in the year when John Kerry was a Democratic nominee, we were the only state that switched from Bush to Kerry.
Yep, we were. And we have not lost since then. And, if there wasn't, don't talk to me about polling, but if that poll hadn't been wrong in 2016 and Colin Van Osten been elected governor, we'd already be looking at a dramatically different state here. Because if he was elected, if some of the Washington people hadn't cut back because he thought he was 10 points ahead, not in a horse race, so they cut back on Boston TV. And then you look at the result, and at that southern tier, he didn't do as well as he did elsewhere. If he had been elected in 2016, 2018, where every Democrat on the ballot, he clearly would have been reelected, and our majorities would have been even larger in the House and the Senate. And then 2020, well, every governor, Democrat, Republican, got reelected because every governor was on TV every single day. So if he was running for a third term in 2020, he would have overwhelmingly been reelected. We would have held on to our House and Senate and Council majorities because it was very narrow losses that happened. And then going into 22. So what would happen in 22 is we would have had the majority for the redistricting after
Wouldn't
the
that
20.
have been something?
And so we just would have
But
created.
I'm seeing a theme here. Washington cutting us off every time.
Well, but
How do we deal with this?
Well, in 2018, People didn't really believe in us. We didn't have a U.S. Senate race. Though, we had an open congressional race in the first district because Carol Shea Porter retired. And, so there wasn't a lot of interest. And it was like, well, to run a competitive coordinated campaign, you've got it's about $3.5 million, and the state party budget is about 1.2 a year, and it was like, okay, so so that's 2.5 and 3.5. Can I raise $6 million in 2 years? And I did. So if you put your mind to it, anything's possible, other than dieting. Any other situation works, just not the dieting. Just not the dieting.
You're not looking too bad. I think you're doing all right.
Don't talk to my doctor.
You want to do the remaining videos?
No, I think we're good. I would like to talk a little bit about the budget priorities that Sununu laid out. In particular, the expansion in two directions of this voucher program, where public school money, at a time when our public schools are struggling, is going to private schools.
89%, I saw the other day, 89% of the people that are grabbing the public money to go to these private schools were already enrolled in the private schools.
Yeah.
These aren't new kids.
Yeah.
These aren't new
In fact, there's a bill up to only make it available to people who want to leave the public schools.
Yeah.
Which makes, I don't know if that makes sense.
It is
but it's better than what we
there.
got.
Look at all the polling shows. The smarter you are, the more educated you are, the more likely you are for Democrat. So they're going to do whatever the hell they can, because there's barely any regulation of these homeschoolers.
Yeah, that's very
There's no
true.
oversight,
Very
let alone regulation.
So it's
There's
like
no oversight.
okay, well, Bobby can tie his shoes, give him a high school diploma, and then how does he help our economy without any skills or any ability? I mean, it's disastrous. Sununu waltzed in, read something, and left. That was the shortest budget address that I think anyone had ever seen.
22 minutes.
And he then left his staff to explain to the press what it all meant. He just he did his fluff
Well,
as
his
usual.
His thoughts are different elsewhere right now.
Yeah, and the problem is you can't trust him. I will never sign into law anything that hurts a student's ability to vote. What does he do? Sign how many bills that hurts students' ability? I'll vote for. I will sign paid family medical leave. What does he do? Veto it over and over.
And he was pro-choice.
And over. I'm pro-choice. What do you do? Sign the most
An
restrictive
abortion bill in a budget because he can't veto a budget, which he vetoed a budget.
Yeah, exactly. No, so
Perfect Republican presidential candidate material, if you ask me.
So Ray, I want to, if it's okay, I'd like to turn the discussion now to how and what kind of shape do you think the Democratic committee here and the committees that you help around the state, the local committees, are for the tilt coming up. We have municipal elections coming up this year in your home city and mine.
So we're in the
Right
midst
here.
of let's talk about the towns, and we can talk about the city. So the towns right now, so any community that's not a city, they have elections in March, or some have them in April, but
I'm seeing the signs
90%
starting to
of
come
them are in March. So the local communities out there making sure that they elect good people. We don't care what their party is, just make sure they're not anti-education. If they get on the school board, or they're not trying to hurt kids with all this gobbledygook that's on Fox News, or the selectmen, blah blah blah. And we are also having the town committee's reorganization at the same time, so every town committee has to elect a chair, secretary, treasurer, vice chair, and delegates to the state convention for the next 2 years. Over the course of, we're halfway through, ends at April 1st. But simultaneously, we also have the Blue Hampshire Task Force, where we go out and go out into the weeds and try to get every single human being that has an opinion on what went right or what went wrong in 22 to give us, so we can take that information, boil it down, and improve the party. So there's a lot of stuff going on in the local committees, and then we're gonna the counties will be electing later on, and that's when Manchester and Nashua, because we followed the Republican State Party actually, and declared Nashua and Manchester County Committee, so that we're not under the Hillsborough County Democrats, we're our own group. And then we got the city election, and we'll see what the mayor is going to decide to do. Should she not run again, I think there's a great number of people that
Some very fine candidates are willing if she decides not to.
Absolutely.
I think that's very good.
So I feel very good. We elected some really good people to the school board, some new, Argyropoulos, citywide young, I think 25 years old. There's a lot of young people, the Ward 7 school committee member, who I know very well, but his name is just ran out of my head. He was so articulate the other night with the people coming after the trans kids, just phenomenal, and just a good young man. And that gives you, because when you see young people that are that solid in their 20s as elected officials, you're like,
I love it.
We've got folks that are in the pipeline. They can keep right on moving up. So that's exciting. The alderman, we elected a good number of new people last time. God forbid we elect somebody from Ward 8. I don't know. Lord knows I've tried.
It's a tough ward. I can tell you, it's a tough ward. You need an extraordinary person to come forward there.
Yeah, and
there are good people in Ward 8 that are trying, but it's a very steep hill.
It's not the ward that you grew up in, and it's not the ward that I represented for two decades.
Unrecognizable.
It is.
There's a nastiness. There's just a nasty discourse going on in that ward. It's not what it used to be.
They truly, I rarely go onto that Facebook page because they truly get excited about being mean.
Yep.
They get excited about saying something just outrageous that in any other place you're just like,
well, that's a behavior we're seeing too much of at the national level.
I know, but that seemed to be all collected in Ward 8.
Yeah, there is a lot of it. It's tough, and the demographic is not perfect for a Democrat, and it's sad.
Yeah. Kathy Sullivan was districted back into her own Ward 6, where she had been her whole life before. They came and put it into Ward 8, and so she was very happy to leave Ward 8. I was like, oh, thanks for abandoning me, Kathy.
Yeah. And your own office and the work you're doing, that's still satisfying?
Well, we've got
good
our officer
there?
elections are March 11th. And
you're going to stand for re-election, I assume.
And the filing period happened in January, and I am not opposed for my 9th term. And Martha Bill Clark is also unopposed. Senator Clark is unopposed for her 9th term as first vice chair. Senator Betty Lasky decided not to run again for second vice chair, and Maura Sullivan is going to run for second vice chair. And then we have 2 young women as our secretary and our treasurer. Maithri Chidity, I think she's 26 or so. She's our secretary. And then Caitlin Rollo, originally from Manchester, now from Hopkinton, has been our treasurer for the last few years. We are working hard to make sure that we have lots of young, energetic people, because this past year and a couple of years has been really rough on a lot of us. The loss of Judy Reardon, the loss of Kathy Rogers, loss of Brenny Cushing, and on and on and on. There's a lot of contemporaries, and it reminds us that life isn't forever, and you better be prepared so that if something happens, people can because the worst would be something happen and then the party just kind of falls apart. I want to make sure that it's so strong that it doesn't matter who is the chairs.
You got to have those people come up for the junior league. Well, we're out of time.
We're out of time.
Always.
And Michael,
I barely get going, and then you're out of time.
Mike will be back next week. I'll be away. I'll be traveling, but Mike will be back.
Got a great guest lined up.
Great guest lined up, and I hope you'll tune in and follow our show on Instagram.
Spotify,
or
and what was the
YouTube.
Other one?
YouTube.
And
hit the like button.
And
See you next week,
our
folks.
surveys, folks. And by the way, just a quick thing.
No more quick things. We're out of time. See you next week, folks.
I just want to say